Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, the host of this show. You know my story. I'm a recovering political hack and a recovering lawyer. I spent years working in politics, including as a speechwriter, with stints working in the Clinton White House and for a California governor. Spent years practicing law in Silicon Valley and the San Francisco Bay Area. And 10 years ago, I discovered this medium, podcasting, and I've been doing it ever since because I get to talk to really interesting entrepreneurs all over the globe, and today is no exception. Over 10 years, I've talked to so many great top CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of companies and organizations ranging from YPO to EO, Activation Blizzard, LendingTree, OpenTable, and many more. I'm also the co-founder of Rise25, where we help B2B businesses with the strategy and production they need to create a podcast that produces tremendous ROI and connects them with their ideal prospects and referral partners. And today I'm excited because my guest is Marina Byezhanova. How was that? Byezhanova, there we go. She is a Soviet-born, Ukraine-raised, Canada-based entrepreneur whose mission is to scale the reach of people's voices. She's the co-founder of Pronexia, a HR and headhunting firm, as well as the founder of InfluenceHR and a personal branding architect. She's been quoted and referenced in all kinds of publications from Inc. to Forbes to Fast Company, Success Magazine, you name it. She's recently launched a new personal branding agency called Brandable Leader, and we connected through our mutual involvement in EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and she is presently the Canadian host of the global podcast Forum Confidential. Now, before we get into this episode is brought to you by Rise25 Media. Rise25 helps B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. We specialize in B2B businesses with a high client lifetime value. So to learn more and get more inspiration and ideas about how to get clients, referrals, and great friendships, go to rise25media.com. All right, Marina, I'm excited to interview you. This interview has been quite some time in the making. You've got an amazing story. You were born in the USSR in the Ukraine. Your family was Jewish. Your father suffered a lot of discrimination, and eventually you left the country and ended up in Canada because of that. But take me back. What was life like for you coming up into your mid-teenage years, living in the Ukraine and experiencing discrimination? And you had a father, actually, who was an entrepreneur, wanted to start a company there.
Yes. Life was very different when I was growing up than it is now. The first time that I ever boarded a plane was coming to Canada when I was 16. Little did I know that I would, travel the globe, that I would get to speak to audiences all around the world, be a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, a global organization. I could have never dreamt of that. I can tell you that growing up, when I saw the map, and of course, we had geography classes in school as everybody, to me, the map seems like something so theoretical when I was growing up. Same as, for example, kids here in North America looking at the constellation map. The planets are there, it's
Right.
there. It's just out of reach.
Right.
That's how I felt growing up. So certainly it was, I grew up in a culture of censorship. I grew up, in a very, very different world from, when I say that I was born in the Soviet Union, it sounds like I'm 100 years old. I'm not, I'm 38. It's incredible to believe that world existed in our lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of change. And what was the discrimination like for you?
So, it's interesting because my parents never spoke about the fact that my father was Jewish to us openly. They kind of tried to shelter us. So very often I would overhear my parents talking in whisper and, lowering their voices. You, by the way, great job at pronouncing my last name. As you notice, it's not a Jewish last name, right? It's Slavic. my parents decided to give my sister and me my mother's last name so that people wouldn't know that we were Jewish. Now, they never told us this. I figured this out as an adult. They told us some convoluted story as to how the decision came about. So I was sheltered quite a bit, but still exposed to it. I remember this one time being on a bus with my father. I was 10 years old. We were coming from a hospital. I had a cast on my foot because I'd broken my toe. We were on the bus together, and there were these old ladies who were vicious in the Soviet Union. The scariest part of the population were the old ladies for some reason. This old lady started screaming racial slurs at my father and pushed him off the bus. And you can see, how can an older lady push a man off the bus? But my father is an extremely introverted academic, PhD in linguistics. He wasn't going to resist her. So she pushed him off the bus. He ran 2 bus stops so that he could retrieve me off the bus because I was in a cast. And so I remember stories like that. I remember my sister getting notes in her backpack at school saying, "Go back to Israel, you dirty Jew," because my father had come to the school to give a talk, and kids, I guess, because of his looks, figured out that he was Jewish. So those things I remember, they were hard to make sense of because, as I said, my parents didn't really address it. And then when we came to Canada, my father would tell every single person he met, "Hi, my name is Michael and I'm Jewish," because he could, and he felt, the freedom. It took quite a few years, and I said, "Dad, it's okay. You don't have to say it every single time." And he said, "But I can, so I want to," which was quite beautiful.
That's funny. And so your father, who was an academic, as you mentioned, wanted to start a business in the Ukraine, but they had a kind of a crazy system there if you started a business. I imagine not too entrepreneur friendly. So what was that like?
Not at all, because you can imagine this was a whole brand new world when the Soviet Union fell apart. Ukraine became an independent country yet again. My father had the dream, the entrepreneurial dream. I don't know how or from where, growing up in the Soviet Union, where does that desire even come from? But he had it. And with a PhD in linguistics, his dream was to start a company that would essentially what today is Google Translate, but software packages and on CDs. And so that was the plan. That was his business. He started it. His focus was machine learning even at that time. Was kind of the beginning of that whole thing with very different machines than what they look like today. So he started a business and very quickly found out that the taxation system was set in such a way that if you as an entrepreneur were to pay all of your taxes, and there were a lot of different taxes, it was quite convoluted, the sum of the taxes would come to over 100%. And now it wasn't done by mistake. And a lot of people that find out about this say, "Oh, it's because it was brand new for the system and they didn't realize." No, they realized. They did it on purpose so that the government would still inadvertently always have control over you as an entrepreneur for anything, right? Jail you, fine you, take your business away for anything. And so my father realized that was problem number 1. Problem number 2 was the black market. The day he would release a piece of software, it would be on the black market the next day for $1. And so those 2 things just made it really clear that in order to pursue the entrepreneurial dream, you would have to, engage in the darkest sides of informal economy.
And what was his entrepreneurship journey like once you got to Canada? Was he able to start a new company as soon as you got there? Did it take a while? You hear all the time about people who have PhDs in another country coming to Canada or the US, North America, and having to work as like a taxi cab driver or something like that in order to work their way up.
It's what he did the moment he came. He registered a business right away, and he has been self-employed ever since, collaborating with developers and various collaborators in Eastern Europe, also in the US. But absolutely, he pursued the dream further. He had a bigger dream of creating a business with employees and having an office, but that didn't really, it's not something that really worked out. But he didn't have to deliver pizza. He didn't have to drive a cab, and he keeps working till this day.
And what about for you? What point did you decide that entrepreneurship was for you and you were going to start a company?
I did not have entrepreneurship on my radar whatsoever. It was certainly not glorified when I was growing up. Certainly, I did not see, my father's example growing up and think, oh, this is fascinating. All I saw was just issues, and it's complicated, and there's nothing fancy about it. So it was not my dream at all. My dream, John, was a corporate job. Every year you go up a floor and the view gets better and it's a corner view. And, my parents come, take a picture, send it back home, quote unquote home. And Marina's made it, the immigrant dream. Entrepreneurship came by surprise. I got recruited to start a business by a former coworker. I was on maternity leave. That's when we're hormonal, we're crazy, we make crazy, spontaneous decisions. That's how the journey started. And so, for many, many years, I said, I'm not really an entrepreneur. I'm an accidental entrepreneur. Real entrepreneurs, they sell lemonade and, trade baseball cards and shovel snow, and they have all those stories, and I don't. When I joined EO, I always felt a little bit inadequate and less of an entrepreneur until, years passed, and I realized that I am an entrepreneur. I am an opportunity seeker and a risk taker, and the passion is certainly in me.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I asked that question of so many entrepreneurs, and you would think, since I primarily interview entrepreneurs, that the majority would have those stories about lemonade stands or shoveling snow, but you'd be surprised how many don't. And I wasn't like that. I wasn't out doing lemonade stands every weekend, so it's a little bit of reassurance for me as well. And so you start this company, which was and is in recruitment, sourcing, HR. And what were the early days like? Did it take off immediately? Did it take a while?
Well, so there were a couple of things. My co-founder and I, we wanted to, bootstrap and grow organically. That was important to us. But we were both extremely ambitious and also wanted to, do well, and had a bunch of babies and bills to pay. She had her own babies. I had my own babies, not together, but a bunch, and that we continued having along the journey as well. So we started in a very humble way, subletting a basement office, buying ramen noodle soups in bulk, eating them for lunch every day until I developed stomach issues. Are alive and well, but we did scale quite rapidly. We joined EO, I think by year 4 or 5 of operation, and that was in the services industry, growing completely organically, juggling mothering of kids and the business. So I'm quite proud of that.
And, for those who don't know EO, in order to qualify for EO, you have to be doing over 7 figures in revenue. Did that feel like a victory to you when you hit that point, having come from where you'd come from?
This is going to sound so cheesy and so promotional of EO. It felt like more of a victory that we could join EO than even the actual revenue goal. What's interesting is that when we found out EO, got first exposed to the organization, I remember the first event that I attended. We did not qualify whatsoever yet. I attended the first event, and John, I was driving home, and I still remember that feeling of, these are my people. I found my people. They don't think I'm weird. And they are a bit weird, and that's okay. And I remember having that feeling. We didn't qualify. And we were told of the accelerator program that EO has, where with another revenue threshold you can join. You can go through the program for 3 years, scale to 7 figures, and then join EO. We scaled within a year. Thanks to Accelerator. Wow. We doubled our revenue in 1 year with no increase in headcount. We reshuffled some of the heads thanks to our mentor, but we did not have to add headcount. It was quite incredible. The moment we saw the numbers and saw that we hit 7 figures, I remember being elated, and my thought was not, oh my God, I am an entrepreneur that scaled the business so much. My thought was, oh my God, I'm applying to be an EO, and I was filling out the application.
That's awesome. So you're also really passionate about personal branding. Where did that come about from?
It developed quite naturally for a couple of reasons. Number one, as I mentioned, I grew up in the culture of censorship. And it was so, I don't know, just part of the DNA and part of, who I was, that feeling, you have to suppress yourself. You have to censor what you're saying. You have to be careful. That when I came to Canada, I was only 16 years old, but I remember, that very vivid thought, this is democracy and I can speak my mind. I can, express myself. Now, I had an extremely thick accent. And so as much as I could legally, express myself, people weren't that interested in hearing me out. It took a while. I made a lot of mistakes. I stumbled on my words. It was quite choppy. So I had this determination to, be able to find my voice and scale its reach. I also faced quite a bit of discrimination. When I was looking for a job straight out of school, I realized that there was a lot of discrimination against recent immigrants. It wasn't until I removed all mention of Ukraine and me speaking Russian from my CV that I would start getting phone calls for interviews. People just assumed that my communication skills would be rough and that I wouldn't fit in. Now, my communication skills were rough, but I saw quite a bit of discrimination. And then also I noticed that marketing your business, marketing your small business is expensive and hard. Marketing, B2B and investing in it. And so for all those different reasons, it kind of all started coming together where I started focusing on building my own personal brand, scaling the reach of my voice and creating visibility. Slowly, I started speaking at events. I started building my reputation within EO, getting involved in things, started leveraging LinkedIn quite a bit. So all those different things, and started seeing incredible results for myself and for my business. So number one, more and more people interested in hearing me speak and hearing my voice. There is nothing more precious to me, and my why is helping others, inspiring others to find their voice and scale its reach. I believe there's no more precious commodity than voice, for obvious reasons that I have shared. And also started seeing incredible ROI for the business as far as clients, incredible media attention as well, which media placement is hard to get for a business, but for a thought leader, it's accessible. And then your business gets mentioned as a result. So my interest was completely selfish, purely selfish for the reasons that I described. And then just slowly and organically started having people approach me, other entrepreneurs or executives saying, I like what you're doing. Can you teach me how to do it? And as we started having those conversations, I'm an entrepreneur. There came a package. There came a business idea. It all came together. And the business is now an actual business and it's incorporated. It's called Brand of a Leader and it's a personal branding agency.
And I love how you, like many entrepreneurs, just so launched straight into it. You have paying clients for it right now. And you were telling me beforehand, you don't have a website built yet.
Yes, indeed. It's comical. And, when I had the first client approach me, first prospective client, she asked me, how many people have you done this? Because I said, I have a program. I just created a program because I figured there's interest. Had somebody approach me and say, how many people have you done this with, Marina? And I very honestly said, none. I said, none. The first time you start building a business, you feel you have to fake it till you make it. You're exaggerating. How many employees are you? You're 0, you say 3. You have 3, you say 5. You have 5, you say 10, right? All this feeling that you have to exaggerate. And because it's my second business, I felt I didn't have to. I can be real and honest. And so I said, none. You will be my first. But I promise you, I will go above and beyond because you're my first client. And so she thought about it. Former president of a multi-million-dollar transportation company looking to rebrand herself. So she thought about it for a second and she said, listen, we all start somewhere. Let's get started. And then the second client, I said, you're client number 2, the third, you're client number 3. And now I'm fortunate to be busy with so many clients that website build has taken a bit of a back burner, but I finally incorporated. So at least that's done.
That's good. That's good. And now I know you have used a lot of different mediums. You've done LinkedIn Lives, you're active on LinkedIn, speaking, appearing in media, podcasts. Take us through, for a new client, what are the steps? What are the elements? What do you do first for someone who wants to develop a personal brand, wants to build a reputation, wants to use that to fuel their business? What are the steps that you take them through?
Step number 1 is developing the client's personal brand architecture. Identifying what the personal brand is going to be all about. What is my client's big vision, mission, what is unique about their voice, what is the impact that we're going to be making together, who is the audience. We have to identify what the platforms are going to be, etc. So that work takes 6 weeks. And what happens, John, as you can imagine, when I have entrepreneurs approach me, they say, okay, so you let me know, Marina, am I doing podcasts? Am I doing speaking engagements? What am I doing? And how soon can I start? And then I say, we'll figure it out and we'll take 6 weeks. And I see the face go, oh, but I want to start. And I say, but that's the start. The start is first figuring out and gaining that personal brand clarity. So those are the steps. That's where we start. And then number 2 is when we start scaling the reach of the client's voice. And for different clients, that means leveraging different forms of media. One of my clients right now is preparing to launch an online course. And so, we're gearing up towards that. He's launching a summit in preparation for that. Have another client who's launching a podcast. So for different clients, we'll leverage different forms of media. The more the merrier, right? The more you scale the reach, the better. But we identified based on each client. But before that, it's a process of figuring it all out.
That's great. And I want to wrap things up. We're getting a little short on time, but I'll wrap things up with 2 questions I always enjoy asking, which is, first of all, I'm a big fan of gratitude. So as you look around at your peers, particularly you've been really active in EO, so maybe there's some people in there that you would want to acknowledge, but who do you admire? Who do you respect? Who are others who are doing interesting things in your community or larger community at large that you admire and respect?
So first of all, I would acknowledge the whole EO community. I really, really would. And especially now during the pandemic. I am just crazy fan of people who are eternal optimists and, see the bright side of everything. And oh my God, have we seen that during the pandemic or what? The conversations that I had with EO members in the last 6 months, how long has it been now? 8 months, have been my lifeline. Calling fellow entrepreneurs who got massive hit to their business, right? Lost 50% of revenue, 70, 80, somebody 90. They would start telling me the stories of how the businesses got affected. My heart would start to bleed. And then right after they would say, but you know what, Marina? I think it's great that this happened because this is making me pivot into, and then they would tell me the most inspiring, crazy, not normal, but in the best of ways, makes me really proud that I'm a part of it.
That's really cool. All right. And then the last question. So let's pretend we're at an awards banquet, like the Oscars or the Emmys. You're receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award for everything you've done up until this point. And what we all want to know is, who do you thank? So who are the mentors along the way? Who are the coaches along the way? Who are the business, people along the way, forum members? Who are the people that you would acknowledge in your remarks?
I would certainly start by acknowledging my parents who brought me to Canada, because I would not have the life that I have or anything close to it. I visited Ukraine at some point and just thought, wow, my life would be something completely different if I were to stay there. So I would start with my parents. I would absolutely love to acknowledge my incredible mentor that I had when I was in EO Accelerator, George Levesque. He's the one that taught me how to run a business and scale a business. So he would absolutely be somebody I would acknowledge. EO community at large. And right now I'm working with an incredible vision coach. Her name is Daria. She's a fellow Ukrainian. And she's the one who kept me sane throughout the pandemic when I, spent mornings and nights staring at the ceiling for a good week saying, what is going to happen? What is next? Everything is crashing and burning. She's the one that kept me sane. But the list is so long. I'm really fortunate. I have the most incredible network of people that inspire, that lift me up and help me scale my voice.
Awesome, Marina. So I know that the Brandable Leader website isn't up yet, so we won't point them to that, but maybe your LinkedIn page, where can people go to learn more about you?
Definitely my LinkedIn, and inadvertently you'll be able to also see what I personally do and how I increase my reach as well. So LinkedIn would be a great place to reach me, and hopefully sooner rather than later the website will be live.
Exactly. All right, but I'm going to spell it for people. So Marina, Marina, and last name is Byezhanova, in case you're looking her up on LinkedIn. Marina, thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
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 And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.